The barn was colder than the snowstorm raging outside, yet sweat dripped down Maren Hale's spine as the iron doors slammed shut behind her. Lanterns flickered overhead, casting long, trembling shadows across the crowded room of men who had come to bid on her. Some drunk, some grinning, some whispering numbers as if she were cattle. The smell of whiskey, damp hay, and old blood clung to the air. Silas Crowther shoved her forward, his voice booming. 19 years old, unspoiled. She goes to the highest bidder. Maren's breath seized. Her wrists burned against the rope. She tried to step back, but there was nowhere to run. And then the door creaked open again. And the man who stepped inside would change everything. Hope you enjoyed this story. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear where you're watching from. Now let's continue with the story. Rowan Creed stood framed in the doorway, snow collecting on his shoulders, his hat dripping with melting frost. He didn't rush in like the other men had. He simply paused, scanning the room with a gaze so steady it made half the crowd fall silent. His presence was unusual for a man entering an illegal auction, calm, controlled, as though he were walking into Sunday service instead of a den of cruelty. Maren's eyes flicked toward him. He did not leer. He did not smile. He simply looked tired. Tired in a way that suggested he'd seen too much of the world to be shocked anymore. Silas Crowther broke the silence with forced cheer. "Ah, Rowan Creed, didn't think you'd show to something like this. You're not usually the type." Rowan tipped the brim of his hat. "I'm not," he said simply. Laughter snaked through the barn, low and mocking, but Rowan didn't react. Instead, he stepped further into the room, the wooden floor groaning under his boots. Jonah Creed's carved wooden horse, tied to a leather strap on Rowan's saddle, still hung from his belt, lightly tapping against his thigh as he walked. It was an odd detail, but it would matter later, though none of the men understood that now. Silas cleared his throat and yanked Maren closer to the lantern light. Her breath shuddered, and she felt heat prickle behind her eyes. She wouldn't cry. Not here. Not in front of these men. $3, Silas announced. That's where we'll start. Her age alone is worth more than that. But I'm feeling generous. More laughter. Maren squeezed her eyes shut for half a heartbeat. She prayed no one would raise a hand. She prayed someone would. Anyone who might be kinder than Crowther. She didn't know which prayer was safer anymore. One man shouted, "2!" Silas growled. "We start at 3. Open your ears." Another voice from the back. $3.50. Silas grinned, exposing yellowed teeth. "There we go. Anyone going higher?" A long pause. Boots shuffled. Men whispered. Then Rowan spoke. 3. It wasn't a bid. It was a statement. Silas's smile faltered. "Creed, the bid is already at 3, Rowan repeated, stepping forward. "And that's all you'll get out of me." The room stiffened. A few men scoffed. Others exchanged uneasy glances. Rowan Creed wasn't wealthy, but he wasn't stupid. To challenge the auction rules was to challenge Crowther himself. Crowther's eyes narrowed. "You trying to start a fight in my barn?" Rowan stopped within just a few feet of Maren. He didn't touch her. He didn't even look directly at her. He addressed the room instead. "You're not selling livestock," Rowan said quietly. "You're trafficking a girl, and every one of you knows it." A ripple spread through the crowd. Maren's chest tightened. No one had spoken for her. Not in years. Silas stepped close to Rowan, jabbing a finger into his chest. "Take your self-righteous nonsense out of here. You want her? Bid like the rest." Rowan calmly reached into his coat and pulled out $3 silver. They clinked softly in his gloved hand. "No more, no less," he said. And the moment I walk out with her, this entire auction ends. That's not how this works, Silas hissed. Rowan crouched down, not to fight, not to threaten, but to kneel in front of Maren. The barn went dead silent. He gently took her foot, untied the frayed rope sandal, and lifted it off her swollen ankle. The gesture was so sudden, so intimate in its compassion, that Maren gasped, a sharp, involuntary cry that echoed against the high rafters. She had screamed at beatings before, at fear, at nightmares, but never at kindness. Rowan looked up at her for the first time, then his eyes were steady, deep-set, almost apologetic. "You don't belong to them," he murmured. Crowther snarled, reaching for his gun, but Sheriff Amos Carden, leaning in the far corner, raised a hand. "Let the man finish," the sheriff said, voice flat. "Let's see where this goes." It was the first time Maren noticed him, his badge glinting beneath his coat. Panic seized her again. If the sheriff was here, it meant the law wasn't going to save her. Rowan rose slowly, palms open. "She walks out with me," he said. "Or she walks out alone. But she's walking out." Crowther spat. "You think I'm afraid of you?" "No," Rowan said softly. "But you should be afraid of a dead girl's testimony. You keep doing this. Someone's gonna talk. Someone always talks." Maren didn't understand everything, but she knew this. Rowan was provoking danger for her sake, and every man in the barn was watching to see who would break first. The storm outside howled, pushing snow against the walls. The air thickened until Rowan spoke one more time. $3, that's my offer, and it's the only thing standing between you and a whole lot worse." Silas's nostrils flared. For a moment, it seemed he would shoot Rowan where he stood. But Sheriff Amos finally stepped forward. "Take the money," the sheriff said, "and end this." Silas hesitated, then snatched the coins out of Rowan's hand. The rope came off Maren's wrists with one harsh tug. Her skin burned where it had been bound. Rowan slid his coat off his shoulders and wrapped it around her without asking. Maren flinched. "It's just a coat," he murmured. "Nothing else." And with that, Rowan led her out of the barn and into the blizzard, straight toward a future neither of them yet understood. But danger hadn't ended. It had only stepped aside to gather strength. Because as the barn door slammed behind them, Sheriff Amos leaned toward Silas Crowther and whispered, "Let him take her. We're not done yet." Snow hit Maren's face like a slap the moment they stepped outside. The world beyond the barn was white and shifting, the storm swallowing the town of Cedar Ridge in thick curtains of wind-blown flakes. Lanterns along the street flickered weakly, their lights smothered by the gale. The ground disappeared under churned slush and ice, and the air burned her lungs when she tried to breathe. Rowan's hand settled briefly at her elbow, not gripping, just guiding. "This way," he said, raising his voice over the wind. She followed because there was nowhere else to go, boots slipping on the packed, frozen mud. His coat swallowed her, rough wool heavy across her shoulders, smelling faintly of smoke, leather, and pine. It was the warmest thing she'd felt in months. They cut behind the barn, out of sight of the main street. Maren dared a glance back. The big doors had closed again, shutters slammed tight as if the town wanted its secrets sealed away. Somewhere inside, men were laughing. Crowther would be counting his coins. The sheriff would be watching. No one would be thinking about the girl who'd just disappeared into the blizzard. Her heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her throat. "What are you going to do with me?" she blurted. Rowan stopped beside a post where a wagon waited, half draped in snow. Two sturdy bays stamped and snorted, breath fogging in the cold. He turned, studying her face for a long moment. "I haven't decided yet," he said honestly, "but I know what I'm not going to do." She swallowed. "What's that?" "Sell you, hit you, lock you up." His gaze didn't waver. "You're not a thing to trade. You're a person who's had everything taken from her. That's enough harm for one lifetime." The words were so simple that for a moment she wondered if she'd misheard him. People didn't talk like that where she came from. They talked about what she cost, how much work she owed, how much trouble she was. "Climb up," he said gently, nodding toward the wagon seat. "Storm's only getting worse." Her body moved before her mind caught up, hands fumbling for the rail. Her fingers were numb, trembling. Twice she slipped, boots scrabbling on the icy spoke. Without a word, Rowan came up behind her, braced his hands under her boot and the back of her calf, and boosted her up in a single firm motion. His touch was steady, impersonal, like a man lifting a sack of feed, but with care not to bruise the sack. She settled on the bench, dragging the coat tighter around herself. Rowan swung up beside her, took the reins, and clicked his tongue. The horses lunged forward with a jolt that rocked the wagon. Cedar Ridge blurred past, shadow shapes of storefronts and false-fronted saloons dissolving into white Maren peered out from under the coat collar. Through the storm, she caught glimpses of faces pressed against windows, eyes curious, suspicious, hungry for rumor. She ducked her head. "Do they know?" she asked. "About the barn?" Rowan's jaw tensed. Snow clung to his beard, each breath puffing out in pale clouds. "They know enough," he said. "Know that girls go in and don't come out the same. But knowing and caring are two different things in a place like this." "You cared," she said, before she could stop herself. He was quiet for a moment, the creak of the wagon and the hiss of the storm filling the space between them. "I've seen enough girls come through forts and camps," he said eventually. "Somebody's daughters, somebody's sisters. Men always said the same thing. Ain't my business." His voice turned flint hard. "I'm tired of things not being anybody's business." The road angled out of town, climbing slowly. The wind hit them full on, slamming into her like a wall. She gasped, pressing a hand to the bench to steady herself. "How far?" she asked. "Few miles," he answered. "My place is up in the pines. You'll be warm there dry. No locks on the doors." He said it as if that mattered more than anything. "Why would you tell me that?" she whispered. "Because you're already planning where the exits are," he said. "People who've been trapped always do." He wasn't wrong. Her gaze had memorized the barn doors the moment she'd been dragged inside. Every crack, every hinge, her mind worked that way now without her permission. She looked at him sideways. "You speak like you know something about being trapped." Rowan didn't answer right away. His eyes stayed on the faint track of the road, reins loose but sure in his hands. "I've been under orders my whole adult life," he said at last. "Army tells you when to eat, when to ride, when to shoot, and sometimes who not to save, 'cause their name's on the wrong side of a line." He let out a slow breath. "I've had enough of men deciding who's worth saving." Maren's fingers tightened around the coat. The storm moaned around them, but inside the little cocoon of the wagon seat, something quieter was unfolding, a strange, fragile sense of being seen. "You didn't have to step in," she murmured. "You could have walked away. No one would have blamed you." "Maybe," he said, "but I'd have blamed myself. And I live with me more than I live with any of them." A crooked fence appeared out of the snow, then a cluster of cedar trees. Their dark branches burdened under white beyond them. The land opened back up. rolling out in pale, snow-laden hills. Maren could just make out the faint outline of distant mountains, their jagged shapes softened by the storm. It was bleak, cold, and strangely beautiful. Back near the last building of town, a lone rider shifted in the shadows of a livery stable awning. Watching the wagon disappear, Cody Briggs narrowed his eyes, fingers flexing around his reins. "Rowan Creed," he muttered to himself. "What in God's name are you dragging yourself into now?" He turned his horse toward the main street, toward a small house where his mother, Nora, waited with a pot of stew and an ear that had listened to Cedar Ridge for longer than most had been alive. The news wouldn't take long to spread. In the wagon, Maren's teeth had stopped chattering, not because the cold had lessened, but because numbness had crept in, stealing the tremble from her muscles. "Why 3?" she asked abruptly. Rowan frowned. "3 what?" $3, she said. "That's all you paid?" He exhaled, almost amused. Crowther would have taken more if he could have. But 3 was all I was willing to call ransom, without making it sound like a real price. She turned the word over in her mind. Ransom. Not purchase, not fee, a payment to remove something from danger. And if he'd refused? She pressed. Rowan's mouth thinned, but he didn't dodge. Then we'd be having a different kind of conversation right now. One with more guns in it. Fear pricked beneath her ribs. "You would have fought all of them?" "Maybe not one," he admitted, "but I've picked worse odds." "Why?" she whispered. He glanced at her, his eyes unexpectedly gentle. "Because the alternative was watching you disappear, and I'm done adding ghosts to the list of people I should have helped." Silence fell again, but it wasn't empty anymore. It was thick with unsaid things. The life she'd left behind, the life he wouldn't talk about yet, and the life neither of them knew was coming. After a while, she noticed the storm easing. The snow softened from a stinging barrage to slower, thicker flakes that drifted lazily around them. The sky lightened a shade from charcoal to pewter. Maren relaxed her grip on the bench. Her fingers hurt as the blood returned. Small pulses of warmth like pins and needles. "What happens when we get there?" she asked. "To your place." "You eat," Rowan said. "You sleep. You decide if you're staying a night, a week, or not at all. That's yours to choose." She let out a dry, disbelieving laugh. "You keep saying that, as if I know how to choose anything." "You'll remember," he said softly. "Choice is like muscle. It comes back with use." A shadow of a building appeared ahead, clearer than the rest. Low roof, smoke curling faintly from a stone chimney, a small porch half buried in snow. A split-rail corral stood to one side, its posts crusted in ice. Beyond that, a line of pines shielded the back of the property like silent sentries. Home. Not hers. His. But the word hovered at the edge of her thoughts anyway. The horses slowed as they neared the house. Rowan pulled them to a stop, set the brake, and hopped down, boots crunching into the drift. He circled around to her side and held out a hand. She stared at it. "You said you wouldn't touch me," she reminded him. "I said I wouldn't touch what wasn't offered," he corrected. "Right now, I'm offering you a way down that doesn't end with you flat on your back in the snow." Her lips almost twitched. Almost. "Fair enough," she muttered, placing her gloved fingers in his palm. He eased her down carefully, slower than he needed to, as if he knew how long it had been since anyone handled her without impatience. When her boots hit the ground, snow spilled over their tops, cold seeping instantly into her socks. "This it?" she asked, staring at the cabin. "This is it," he said. "It's not much. But it stands in a storm, and the stove works when it's fed. The door creaked open before they reached it. A small shape barreled out onto the porch. A boy with dark hair sticking out in every direction, coat half-buttoned, scarf dragging. "Uncle Rowan," he shouted, "you're late. Aunt Nora said if you stayed out any longer, you'd turn into an icicle and we'd hang you over the stove to thaw." Rowan's expression softened in a way Maren hadn't seen yet. "Is that so?" Jonah skidded to a stop at the edge of the steps, eyes widening as he finally saw Maren beside Rowan. The boy froze, gaze darting from her face to the oversized coat around her shoulders, then back again. "Oh," he said, voice small but bright with curiosity. "You brought somebody." Maren's heart stuttered. She had no idea who she was in this moment. Captive, stranger, guest, something in between. But as the boy's innocent eyes met hers, another thought edged in, unfamiliar and fragile. Maybe, just maybe, she could become something new here. Rowan cleared his throat. "Jonah, this is Maren. She'll be staying with us." He paused, glancing at her. "For a little while." The way he said it didn't sound like a sentence. It sounded like the start of a choice. And far behind them, in the town they'd just left, Sheriff Amos Carden sat in his office, hat tipped low, turning 3 silver dollars over and over in his hand, already planning how to use them as leverage when the time came to ride back out to the Creed place. The cabin smelled of pine smoke and something faintly sweet. Stew, maybe. Though Maren hadn't tasted anything warm in so long, she almost forgot how to name the scent Jonah darted ahead of them, shucking off his snowy boots with chaotic energy as he pushed the door wide. "Come on," he chirped, bouncing on the balls of his feet. "It's warmer inside. Aunt Nora says Uncle Rowan forgets what cold feels like, but she says girls get cold twice as fast. You're a girl, so you gotta get inside quick." Rowan raised a brow at him. "Jonah." "What?" the boy asked, all innocence and sincerity. Maren hesitated on the threshold. Heat pooled out toward her. Real heat. Wood stove heat. Not the sharp, raw heat of fear she had lived with. Her boots dripped melting snow onto the porch, the cold reaching her toes. She tightened Rowan's coat around her and stepped inside. The cabin was small but well kept. A square table stood near the stove, set with mismatched bowls. Shelves carved by hand displayed jars of dried herbs and canned peaches. A few rough wooden carvings, animals mostly, lined the mantel. Everything looked lived in, used, trusted. "Sit anywhere," Rowan said, brushing snow off his shoulders before hanging his coat by the door. "I'll get the fire going hotter." He opened the stove door, fed new logs inside, and flames snapped to life, casting amber glow across the room. Maren sank into a chair by the table, unsure whether to fold her hands, sit straighter, make herself smaller. Years of habit whispered that she was doing something wrong simply by being here. Jonah slid into the seat across from her. He stared openly, chin propped on his fists. "You look tired," the boy announced. "Jonah," Rowan warned again. "Well, she does." Jonah shrugged. Tired, not sick tired. Aunt Nora says the two are different." Maren managed a faint, surprised smile. "Your aunt sounds wise." "She is. She knows everything, except how to chop wood right. Uncle Rowan says she's going to cut her own foot off one day." Maren's smile slipped. Rowan coughed and shot Jonah a glare. "Maybe don't tell her I said that," Rowan muttered. The boy giggled, and the cabin felt warmer still. Rowan ladled stew from a pot simmering on the stove, the smell filling the room. Potatoes, carrots, venison. He set a bowl in front of Maren. She froze. The steam rose. Her stomach clenched hard enough to hurt, but reflex whispered the same warning it always had. Don't eat first. Don't eat what you're not told to. Don't eat too much. Don't ask for more. Rowan noticed the way her fingers hovered without touching the spoon. You're hungry, he said gently. It's all right to eat. She lowered her eyes. I don't want to take yours. You're not, he said simply. Jonah ate already. I'll eat after you. Why? She asked. He pulled out a chair, sat at the end of the table, and leaned back slightly. Because you've gone a long time without someone caring whether you ate tonight. Someone does. Something tightened in her throat. The spoon shook when she lifted it, and the first mouthful made her eyes sting. Warmth spread down her chest, easing the cold that had settled deep in her bones. Jonah swung his legs under the table. Uncle Rowan makes the best stew in Cedar Ridge better than Aunt Nora's, but don't tell her I said that. Rowan cracked a soft smile. You tell her everything anyway. That's because she gives me cookies, Jonah said proudly. Maren took another bite. Slow, careful. Her body remembered hunger more than taste, but both sensations were overwhelming. She set the spoon down before she cried. Rowan watched her with concern, but said nothing. He didn't ask questions she wasn't ready to answer. After a few moments, Maren whispered, I don't know what to do now. Rowan folded his arms across his chest. For tonight, rest. Tomorrow we figure out the rest. But people saw us leave, Maren said, voice cracking. Sheriff Amos was there. Doesn't he have the right to take me back? Rowan's jaw hardened. He has the badge. That's not the same thing. Fear flickered in her chest again. Crowther won't forget what you did. No, Rowan agreed, he won't. Outside, wind battered the roof, rattling the shutters. A gust pulled a low howl through the chimney like a warning. Uncle Rowan, Jonah whispered. If Crowther comes here, will he try to hurt us? Rowan looked at the boy a long moment, the silence heavy with a truth he did not want to say out loud. Then he placed a hand on Jonah's shoulder. No one's hurting anyone here, Rowan said firmly. Not while I'm breathing. Jonah nodded, trusting the words absolutely Maren wished she could. Later, after Jonah had been tucked into his small bed under a quilt, stitched with crooked stars, Rowan quietly cleaned the table while Maren stood by the stove, warming her fingers by the fire. The flames painted her face in soft gold, and for the first time, her shoulders were not curled inward. You can take the bed, Rowan said, stacking bowls into a basin. I'll sleep out here. Her head whipped toward him. No, I can sleep on the floor. I don't need Maren, he said calmly. It's a bed, not a favor. She swallowed. Her cheeks warmed from something that wasn't the fire. I don't want to trouble you. You being alive isn't a trouble. The room went still. Rowan turned, leaning one hand on the back of a chair. Look, he continued in a low voice. I don't expect you to trust me. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. But you're safe here. And you're free to sleep without fear. Free. The word hit her like a blow. She nodded stiffly. Thank you. Before she could turn away, 3 sharp knocks slammed against the door. Rowan stiffened. He moved to the window, peeled back the curtain just enough to see outside. Snow swirled under the lantern by the porch. A tall man stood silhouetted against the light, arms crossed, hat dripping with melted frost. Cody Briggs. Rowan swore under his breath. Stay back, he told Maren quietly. He opened the door. Evening, Creed, Cody said, stepping inside without waiting for permission. Snow flaked from his coat onto the floor. He was younger than Rowan, but broader, with a swagger that belonged to someone aware of his own strength. "Storm's a hell of a one. Thought you'd be smart enough not to ride in it." Rowan's voice stayed level. "Didn't have a choice." Cody's gaze moved past him, landed on Maren. She froze, instinctively shrinking into the shadows by the stove. "Well?" Cody muttered, eyebrows lifting. "So rumors were true. You really did walk out of Crowther's barn with a girl in tow." "It's not what you think," Rowan said. "Oh?" Cody crossed his arms. "Funny thing is, I don't know what to think. But my mother, she's worried. She said to come check on you because you've got a habit of picking up trouble on your way home." Rowan's eyes narrowed. "Your mother sent you?" Cody shrugged. "She figured if you weren't dead in a ditch, then you might at least need wood or help with the storm shutters." Rowan snorted. "You mean she told you to stop being nosy?" Cody cracked a grin. "Maybe." His grin faded as he looked at Maren again. "Is she hurt?" Maren shook her head quickly. "Crowther won't let this slide," Cody said. "And Amos is worse. You think they'll forget you embarrassed them tonight?" Rowan's silence was answer enough. Cody sighed. "Mama's right then. You're deep in something. Crowther's already sending his men out in the morning. Folks are talking." Maren's breath hitched. Rowan stepped slightly in front of her, subtle but protective. "What are they saying?" Rowan asked. "That you stole Crowther's property," Cody replied bluntly. "That you robbed him in plain view of the sheriff, and that Amos is letting it slide because he's got something planned." Rowan's jaw clenched. "Amos always has something planned." Cody stepped closer. "Look, I don't know this girl, but I know Crowther, and I know what he does to the ones he loses. You need to be careful." "We will be," Rowan said. Cody exhaled hard. "I'll check on you tomorrow. Don't make me find you dead." Rowan gave a small nod. "Thanks." Cody hesitated, then looked at Maren one last time. His voice softened. "Ma'am, whatever Crowther did to you, you're safer here than anywhere else in Cedar Ridge." Then he stepped into the snow and disappeared into the storm again. Rowan closed the door. The cabin seemed smaller now, the shadows deeper. "What does he mean?" Maren whispered. "Safer here than anywhere else?" Rowan turned toward her, expression grim. "Because tomorrow," he said quietly, "Crowther's going to come looking for you." The storm outside roared like a warning, rattling the windows, and in the flickering firelight, Maren finally understood. Getting out of the barn hadn't been the end. It had only been the beginning. Morning found Maren awake long before the sun climbed over the pines. The cabin was still, its silence broken only by the faint crackle of embers settling in the stove. Jonah snored softly behind the closed door of his tiny bedroom. Rowan slept on the rug near the hearth, one arm thrown over his eyes, boots still on, proof he hadn't trusted the night enough to rest fully. Maren sat at the table, legs tucked under her, staring at her hands. They looked different in the light, less like something that had belonged to someone else, more like something she might someday reclaim, but the memory of Cody's warning hung over her like a storm cloud. Crowther's already sending his men out in the morning. When Rowan stirred, she straightened instinctively, as if waiting to be told what to do. He blinked at the ceiling, then pushed himself up, rolling his shoulders with a grunt. "You didn't sleep," Rowan observed quietly, rubbing a hand over his jaw. "I slept enough." He studied her a moment. "You're afraid." She stiffened. "Shouldn't I be?" Rowan didn't argue. He simply rose, added 2 logs to the stove, and set a pot of water on to heat. As steam began to whisper out, He turned to her. "Eat first," he said. "Talk after." Something in his voice made her obey. He handed her a tin cup of warm tea, bitter and earthy but comforting. Jonah tumbled out minutes later with hair standing straight up, demanding breakfast in the way only small boys could. Normalcy, however fragile, wrapped the cabin for a brief moment, but Maren could feel tension building under the surface like pressure beneath thawing ice. After breakfast, Rowan fetched his coat and stepped outside to chop wood. Maren followed quietly. The snow had crusted over during the night, sparkling beneath a pale sky. The storm had passed, but the world felt too quiet. Rowan split logs with slow, measured swings, each thud echoing across the clearing. Maren wrapped the coat tighter around herself. "You're thinking something," Rowan said without looking up. She hesitated. "I don't want to cause trouble for you and Jonah." He paused, resting the axe blade in the snow. "Trouble already came the moment Crowther put his hands on you. I just happened to step into the middle." She didn't know how to answer that. Rowan lifted another log. "But if you're asking whether you're trouble, no, you're a person. Trouble is what Crowther does, not what you are." Her throat tightened again. He made it sound so simple, too simple. A shape moved at the tree line Rowan noticed first. He lowered the axe, narrowing his eyes. It was Nora Briggs. She trudged toward the cabin in a heavy wool coat, gray hair pinned tightly, cheeks flushed from the cold. A satchel swung over her shoulder. When she reached them, she planted her hands on her hips. "Well," she declared, "it's about time I see this mysterious house guest myself." Rowan sighed. "Morning, Nora." "Morning?" She snorted. "I saw Cody at dawn, riding back half frozen and muttering that you'd picked up another stray. I figured he meant a wounded doe or something, not a terrified girl wrapped in your coat." Nora fixed her sharp blue eyes on Maren. "Child," Nora said more softly, "come here. Let me get a look at you." Maren froze. Rowan stepped subtly closer, not blocking her but standing beside her. "It's all right," he murmured. "Nora doesn't bite unless someone deserves it." Nora clicked her tongue. "He's not wrong." Maren took a few hesitant steps forward. Nora reached out, a slow, deliberate gesture, and gently brushed back a strand of Maren's hair, revealing a faint bruise near her temple. "Oh, sweetheart," Nora whispered, anger flickering behind her eyes. "What those men have done." Maren flinched at the touch, but Nora didn't force it. Instead, she opened her satchel and pulled out a small tin of salve. "Made this myself," Nora said. "Works wonders on bruises and burns. You'll dab it on twice a day." She pressed the tin into Maren's hands. No arguments. Maren's eyes stung. "Thank you." Nora nodded, then turned sharply to Rowan. "You, Creed, a word." Rowan gave Maren a reassuring nod and followed Nora a few steps away. Nora wasted no time. "You know Crowther's furious." "I'm aware. And Amos is worse. Man's been pocketing Crowther's money for years. He won't let you embarrass him in front of half the town without consequences." Rowan set his jaw. "I'll deal with it." "Deal with it?" Nora hissed. "Rowan, you're one man with a boy to raise and a cabin to keep standing. And that girl, Lord help her, has been through enough. They won't just come take her. They'll burn this place down to make a point." Rowan glanced back at Maren. She was kneeling in the snow, showing Jonah how to pack snow into a mold to make a little brick. The two were laughing softly. Something tightened in Rowan's chest. "What do you suggest?" he asked quietly. "Lay low. Keep the girl inside, and whatever you do, don't go into town until we know Amos's next move." Rowan nodded once. I can do that. Nora's expression softened. You're doing right by her, Rowan. Just don't get yourself killed doing it. He almost smiled. I'll try. Inside again, Maren helped wash the breakfast dishes while Jonah chattered about a fox he'd seen last week by the creek. She tried to focus on the rhythm, dip, scrub, rinse, but her mind kept drifting back to Nora's sharp eyes and Rowan's tense shoulders. She knew she was safe here, but she also knew safety was temporary. Her hands shook as she dried the last bowl. You're free here, for now, until Crowther remembers what he lost. She pressed the towel to her mouth to keep her breath steady. Rowan entered the cabin, stamping snow from his boots. He saw her expression instantly. What's wrong? Nothing, she said quickly. Too quickly. Rowan walked over, leaning one hand on the table. Maren. It wasn't a command. It wasn't even a question. It was permission. Her shoulders sagged. I don't know how to be here. Not without waiting for something to go wrong. Rowan lowered his voice. Something will go wrong. That's how men like Crowther work. But it won't be today. Or tomorrow. And when it does... He met her gaze. I know how to stand between danger and the people who need me. Her breath caught, not because of the words, but because she believed him. I don't want Jonah to get hurt, she whispered. He won't. You can't promise. I can, Rowan said quietly. And I will. Jonah poked his head around the corner. Are we going to the creek today? Uncle Rowan said when the sun comes out, we can look for animal tracks. Rowan gave Maren a look that said, We'll finish this conversation later. He ruffled Jonah's hair. We'll see. The day unfolded slowly, patches of sunlight breaking through the clouds, melting the heavy drifts until icicles glimmered from the eaves. Maren helped Jonah feed the chickens and stack wood. Every small task grounded her. In the afternoon, she found herself standing alone in Rowan's room, not snooping, just lingering, unsure how to belong in a space that wasn't hers. A small wooden chest sat at the foot of Rowan's bed. The lid was half open. Maren hesitated before gently lifting it. Inside lay a folded military jacket, a silver cavalry insignia, a woman's faded shawl, blue with frayed edges, a letter sealed but never opened. Maren brushed a finger over the shawl. Rowan's voice came from the doorway. That was my sister's. Maren spun, heart jolting. Rowan stepped inside, not angry, just tired. She died 3 winters ago, he said. That's why Jonah's here. Maren lowered her gaze. I'm sorry. You don't need to be life-made choices for her she didn't deserve. I'm trying to make better ones for Jonah. And for me? She whispered. Rowan didn't answer immediately. His eyes softened. You, he said quietly, deserve choices of your own. A knock cracked through the moment. Sharp, urgent, not friendly. Rowan's face turned to stone. Maren, he said, voice low. Take Jonah to the back room, now. Her pulse thundered. Rowan, go! Another knock. Louder this time, Maren grabbed Jonah's hand. Is it Crowther? Jonah whispered, eyes wide. I don't know, Maren murmured. Stay quiet. She ushered him into the back room and shut the door, heart pounding so hard she felt dizzy. From the front of the cabin, she heard Rowan's footsteps, then the door opening, then a voice, calm, oily, unmistakable. Evening, Creed. Sheriff Amos here. We need to have a little talk. Maren pressed her back to the wall. Her worst fear had arrived. The door hung open only a few inches, but the cold that swept inside felt nothing like the morning air. It carried tension, sharp, metallic, the kind that lived in a man's voice long before his hand touched a gun. Sheriff Amos Carden stood on the porch, coat dusted with snow, badge glinting. His eyes were flat, unreadable. The type of eyes that didn't see people, only leverage. Rowan blocked the doorway with his body. "Sheriff," he said evenly, "Creed." Amos doffed his hat just enough to look polite. "Mind if I come in?" "I do." Amos clicked his tongue. "Not very neighborly of you." "This ain't a social call," Rowan replied. "So why are you here?" Amos glanced past Rowan's shoulder into the warm glow of the cabin. "Word travels fast. Heard you walked out of Crowther's barn last night with something that didn't belong to you." Rowan's jaw tightened. Nothing in that barn belonged to anyone. The sheriff's lips twitched. "See, that's exactly the sort of philosophy that makes trouble for a man." Maren held her breath behind the back room door. Jonah clutched her hand, trembling. She pressed a finger to her lips, urging him to stay silent. Amos leaned casually on the porch post. "Crowther's missing merchandise. He's aggravated, says you owe him a girl or 3 times the value." Rowan's voice stayed calm, but steel threaded through it. "He got $3. Not what he meant." Amos chuckled. "You embarrassed him, Creed. Made him look weak in front of his own men. Now he's looking to reclaim his pride. That's his problem." "No," Amos corrected. "That's yours." Silence coiled tight as Wire Amos straightened and dusted snow from his sleeve. "Look, Rowan, you and I have always kept things civil, but harboring stolen property—" Rowan's voice cut through the sheriff's in a low growl. "She's not property." Amos tilted his head. "Crowther sees it different." "I don't care how Crowther sees it." A flicker of annoyance crossed the sheriff's face. He lowered his voice. "You keep her here, and every man loyal to Crowther will come riding up this ridge. They'll burn this place to the ground. You, the boy, even that girl you're trying so hard to protect." From the back room, Maren's breath hitched. Jonah squeezed her hand tighter. "You threaten my home again," Rowan said quietly, "and I stop being polite." Amos smirked. "That the soldier in you talking?" "That's the man with something to protect." The sheriff's gaze darkened. "Think carefully, Creed. I'm giving you a chance to make this simple. Hand her over, and I'll tell Crowther you cooperated. No one gets hurt." Rowan didn't blink. "I'm not handing anyone over." Amos sighed dramatically. "Didn't think you'd say anything sensible today." Rowan stepped forward, forcing Amos to step back. "You're on my porch, Sheriff. My land. You're done here." For a moment, Amos didn't move. His jaw flexed. Then, with a tight smile, he tipped his hat. "All right, have it your way." His voice carried a quiet menace. "But don't say you weren't warned." He turned, boots crunching heavily through the snow. When he reached his horse, he glanced back. "Oh, and Rowan?" Amos called. "Crowther's riding out this afternoon. He's bringing 5 men, maybe more." He mounted, tugged the reins, and rode off into the trees. The moment the hoofbeats faded, Rowan shut the door and braced both hands against it, exhaling slowly. Maren stepped out of the back room. Jonah followed, pale as the snow outside. "Is he gone?" Jonah whispered. "For now," Rowan said. Maren swallowed hard. "What happens now?" Rowan turned toward her, the truth stark on his face. "We need to leave, today, before Crowther reaches this ridge." Maren felt her stomach drop. "Leave? Where would we go?" "Deeper into the woods first," Rowan answered. "Enough to dodge his men. After that, maybe cross the creek, cut south toward the abandoned hunter's cabin." His voice grew firmer, more decisive. "I won't let Crowther touch you, Not here. Not anywhere. Maren nodded shakily. Jonah tugged Rowan's coat. Uncle Rowan, will they hurt us? Rowan crouched, resting a hand on the boy's shoulder. Not if we're smart, and not while I'm here. But we gotta move fast. Jonah swallowed and nodded bravely. Rowan stood and grabbed his saddlebags from the peg by the door. Maren, pack whatever you can carry. Blanket, water jug, anything warm. Jonah, you grab your coat, scarf, mittens, understand? Jonah scampered off. Maren hesitated. Rowan, you're doing all this because of me. Rowan turned to her, eyes steady. I'm doing this because Crowther is a monster who preys on the powerless. You just happen to need help first. Her throat thickened. She wanted to say more, but Rowan was already moving, checking the rifle by the door, securing ammunition, scanning the windows for movement. Minutes later, they stepped outside. The woods loomed tall, heavy with fresh snow. The silence was deceptive, peaceful to someone who didn't know better, terrifying to someone who did. Rowan lifted Jonah into the saddle and tied his own pack behind the seat. Stay low, he ordered gently. Hold on tight. Jonah nodded. Rowan turned to Maren. You ride with me. We'll make better time. She hesitated only a moment before he helped her up. His hands didn't linger, they never did, but the steadiness of his touch anchored her. Once mounted, Rowan swung up behind her. She felt the warmth of his coat at her back, the way he shielded her from the wind without closing her in. Ready? He asked. No, she whispered honestly. Good, he said. Means you're thinking. They set off down a narrow path that wound between pine trunks heavy with snow. For a while, only the rhythmic crunch of hooves broke the silence. Smoke from the cabin's chimney faded behind them. After a mile, Maren finally spoke. Rowan, what if we're caught? We won't be. How can you know that? Because I know Crowther's men, he said. They'll sweep the main roads, not the deer trails. They won't expect us to move fast. Not with Jonah. Jonah turned slightly in the saddle ahead. I'm not slow, he declared. Rowan grinned softly. No, you're not. They pressed deeper into the forest. Hours passed. The light shifted. Ravens cawed overhead. A distant snap echoed through the trees. Maybe a fox, maybe a branch, maybe not. When the sun dipped low, Rowan pulled the horse to a stop. We camp here, he said. Mossy boulders created a natural windbreak. Rowan dismounted, helped Maren down, and then Jonah. He scanned the woods, listening. We're close to the cabin I mentioned, he murmured. Another hour tomorrow, but not tonight. We can't risk traveling in the dark. He lit a small, controlled fire using pine needles and dry bark. Maren wrapped Jonah in a blanket. The boy leaned against her, already drowsy. Rowan sat nearby, rifle across his knees. Eyes scanning the shadows, Maren watched him. Broad shoulders tense, jaw set, breath clouding in the cold. He looked like a man holding up the whole forest on his back. You've done this before, she said quietly. His gaze didn't shift. Too many times. Escaping men like Crowther? No, he said. Escaping men like the ones I used to take orders from. Maren absorbed that, held it gently, then the silence shattered. Distant voices, faint but real. Rowan stiffened. Damn it. Maren grabbed Jonah instinctively. Are they? Yes, Rowan said. Crowther's men. How close? Closer than I like. Maren felt her pulse pounding in her ears. Jonah's small body trembled in her arms. Rowan stood, threw dirt over the fire, and lifted the rifle. We run, he whispered. Now. And as the night pressed in around them, Maren realized this was no longer about escaping Crowther. It was about surviving until dawn, The forest swallowed sound the moment they started moving again. Rowan led the way, one hand gripping his rifle, the other motioning Maren and Jonah to stay close. The night pressed in from all sides, thick, cold, merciless. Even the moon hid behind heavy clouds, forcing them to navigate by instinct alone. "Stay right behind me," Rowan said in a low voice. Maren shifted Jonah onto her hip, clutching him under the blanket. "I'm here." Behind them, distant voices wove through the woods, rough men, laughing between curses. Lanterns bobbed like pale fireflies between the trees. Crowther's men were searching, sweeping the forest in widening arcs. Rowan glanced back once, reading the woods as though the trees themselves were speaking to him. "They're too close. We need to head toward the ravine." Maren swallowed. "The ravine? At night?" "It'll slow them down," he said, "or at least confuse their dogs." Jonah tightened his grip around Maren's neck. "Do they want to take us?" "No, kid," Rowan said softly. "They want to take her." Maren felt her heart twist. "Rowan, keep moving." They followed him down a slope slick with fresh snow branches snagged at Maren's coat, but she kept her footing. Rowan moved like a shadow, fast, quiet, deadly focused. Every so often he raised his hand, signaling them to stop. When he listened, Maren listened too, straining to hear whatever he heard. More voices, closer. Jonah whimpered. Maren shushed him, whispering into his hair. "We're safe, Rowan's got us." Rowan looked back. His voice was barely above a breath. "We're cutting right." He led them to a narrow game trail snaking between tall pines. The ground dipped suddenly, forcing Maren to slide the last few feet. Rowan caught her arm, steadying her before she fell. "You okay?" "Yes," she whispered, breathless. "Go." They moved again, but the voices followed. Footsteps, branches snapping, men pushing through the dark with growing impatience. Then, a gunshot cracked through the trees. Rowan jerked them behind a wide oak, pushing Maren and Jonah down behind the roots. "Stay low." Maren crouched, pulling Jonah into her lap. His small hands clutched her coat so tightly she could hardly breathe. "Rowan," she whispered. "Are they shooting at us?" "Warning shot," Rowan said. "They want to rattle us." "It's working," Jonah whispered shakily. Another gunshot, closer. This one sparked off a tree trunk just a few yards from them. Rowan gritted his teeth. That one wasn't a warning. He grabbed Maren's hand. "We run now." They burst from behind the tree. Racing down the slope, Rowan practically lifted Jonah into his arms, carrying him against his chest. Maren ran beside him, boots sinking into the snow with every step. Branches whipped her face. Her lungs burned. Behind them, the men shouted, "She went this way! Crowther wants her alive! Don't lose 'em!" Rowan didn't look back. "Keep going. Don't stop unless I say so." Maren pushed herself harder. The cold sliced through her clothes, yet sweat trickled down her spine from sheer terror. Then the trees parted, and the ravine yawned open before them. A dark, jagged canyon carved by centuries of rushing water. Now frozen, silent, and terrifying, Maren stopped abruptly. "Rowan, we'll fall." He scanned the drop. "No, there's a narrow shelf along the right side. We take it." "That thing? It's barely a foot wide." "You trust me?" She hesitated only a heartbeat. "Yes." "Then follow my steps exactly." He stepped onto the rocky shelf, still holding Jonah with one arm. The ledge curved along the ravine wall, slick with patches of ice. Maren's breath caught as she followed. Her fingertips clung to the rock. Her boots scraped for grip. Behind them, the lanterns flickered through the trees. Hurry, Rowan whispered. They edged along the ledge, one step at a time. Rowan went first, Jonah clinging to his coat. Maren followed, every muscle trembling. The voices approached. Lantern light flashed on snow and branches. There! A man shouted. They're at the ravine! Shoot if you see the girl! A shot rang out. A spray of rock chips exploded near Maren's feet. She gasped, nearly slipping. Rowan spun around, eyes blazing. Keep your eyes on me, Maren, not them. I'm trying. You're doing good, just move. Another step, another. The ledge curved inward, wider for a moment. Rowan pulled them into a shallow, cave-like recess carved into the ravine wall. Get down, he ordered. They crouched inside the hollow. Jonah huddled against Maren. Rowan positioned himself at the entrance, rifle raised, watching the forest above them. The men reached the ravine edge. Where the hell did they go? They can't have climbed down. Then they're hiding somewhere, spread out. Boots stomped along the ridge, snow fell from the ledge in small clumps. Rowan held his breath. Maren held hers. Minutes passed. Then, a lantern swung over the edge. Yellow light flickered down the wall of the ravine, passing within inches of Rowan's boots. Maren felt her heart thundering so hard, she thought the men could hear it. But the lantern withdrew. I don't see nothing. They probably doubled back. Let's try the north side. Crowther's gonna skin us if we lose her. Boots pounded as they moved away. Their voices faded. Finally, silence. Rowan exhaled slowly and lowered his rifle. We wait 5 more minutes, then we move. Maren nodded shakily. Jonah clung to her side, still trembling. She stroked his hair. You're okay, sweetheart. You're so brave. Rowan watched them quietly. Something softened in his gaze. Not relief, exactly, but something close. When the forest settled fully again, he motioned them onward. This way. There's a slope up ahead where we can climb back to the trees. They followed him along the remaining ledge until it widened and sloped upward. Rowan boosted Jonah first, then reached down to pull Maren up by both hands. Once all three stood safely among the trees again, Rowan paused. They'll sweep back here eventually, he said. Crowther won't give up. Not tonight. Not tomorrow. Maren lifted Jonah into her arms again. Where do we go now? Rowan pointed south toward deeper, darker forest. There's the hunter's cabin I told you about. Isolated, abandoned. If we reach it before dawn, we might get a few hours of rest. Maren nodded. And after dawn? She asked quietly. Rowan's jaw tightened. After dawn, we start planning how to stop Crowther for good. Maren drew a breath. You mean, face him? Rowan didn't answer immediately, but in his silence she heard everything. He wasn't just running anymore. He was preparing. And she knew, with a deep, aching certainty, that the danger ahead would be worse than anything they'd seen so far. The woods grew darker as night thinned toward dawn, the sky shifting from black to deep blue. Rowan led the way through the thick pines, boots crunching lightly over frost, as if he knew exactly which branches would stay silent underfoot. Maren followed closely behind, carrying Jonah beneath the blanket Rowan had given her. Are we close? She whispered. Breath clouding in the air, Rowan nodded toward a small rise ahead. Just past that ridge. Jonah stirred. Is it safe? Safer than anywhere else until sunrise, Rowan answered without slowing. They climbed the ridge, pushing through a wall of brush at the top. Then the woods opened into a small clearing, and there it stood. A weather-beaten hunting cabin, leaning slightly to one side, its roof patched with mismatched boards. Smoke no longer rose from the chimney. Windows were dark, half-frosted. Wooden steps sagged gently under decades of storms. Yet the structure still held, stubborn and silent, waiting like an old friend who never stopped believing someone would return. Maren let out a long, shaky breath. We made it. Rowan scanned the clearing with a soldier's caution, eyes sweeping the tree line, the ground, the cabin's shadowed corners. Only after another tense moment did he lower his rifle. Let's get inside. He led them up the steps, testing each plank before placing his weight on it. The door stuck at first. He pushed harder, and it groaned open with a low creak. Inside, dust motes drifted through the narrow beams of dawn, creeping in through the gaps in the walls. A rough wooden table stood in the center, along with 2 chairs, one broken. A stone fireplace crouched at the far wall, its hearth cold and filled with brittle ashes. Jonah shivered. It's freezing. Rowan motioned for them to sit. I'll check the place. He searched the corners, the cupboards, the loft. Moving with trained care, Maren could feel tension radiating from him. Not fear, but readiness, like a bowstring pulled taut. After a few minutes, Rowan returned. No one's been here in months. We're good. Maren set Jonah near the fireplace. Do you think we could get a little heat going? Rowan nodded. I'll try. There might be some dry wood stored out back. He stepped outside again. Maren watched the door, heart pounding harder than it should. She didn't like him being out of sight. Not after everything they'd just escaped. Jonah leaned against her. Mama, are the bad men coming? Not right now, she whispered. Rowan won't let them hurt us. Jonah thought about that, then nodded, trusting in a way that made her chest ache. A moment later, Rowan returned carrying an armful of wood, snow dusting his shoulders. He knelt at the fireplace, arranging the logs with practiced precision. It won't be much, but it'll warm the room enough. When he struck the match, the flame glowed bright in the gray cabin. Jonah's eyes lit with awe. Soon, a small fire crackled, its warmth creeping slowly into the freezing air. Maren sat closer, rubbing her arms. Thank you. Rowan shrugged off his coat and draped it around her shoulders. You're colder than you think. But what about you? I'll be fine. She curled into the coat's warmth, breathing in the faint scent of pine, smoke, and something rugged. Something distinctly Rowan. For a long moment, the only sound was the fire. Then Rowan spoke. We can't stay long. Crowther's men will sweep this area after sunrise. They know this forest better than most. Maren looked up at him. So what's the plan? Rowan stared into the flames. I'm thinking. About running? No. His voice was edged with steel. About ending this. Maren's heart tightened. Rowan. He continued, jaw set. I know Crowther. He won't stop. Not because you said no, not because you asked him to leave you alone. Men like him don't understand no. They only understand losing. Maren swallowed hard. What are you planning to do? I'm planning to protect you, Rowan said. Both of you. Jonah looked between them, sensing the seriousness. Rowan, are you going to fight him? Only if I have to. Maren's throat closed. She knew Rowan had a violent past. Everyone in town whispered about it, a bar fight that escalated. A man who came close to dying. Charges dropped, but scars remained. People judged him by pieces of a story they didn't know, but she knew something they didn't. Rowan was dangerous only when protecting someone, and God helped the men who threatened those he protected. Still, she whispered, I don't want you getting hurt because of me. Rowan looked up at her, really looked at her. Maren, what you don't see is, I'm already in this. I was in it the moment I saw Crowther put his hands on you. I'm not backing out now. Heat spread through her chest. A mix of fear, gratitude, and something she wasn't ready to name. Jonah crawled into Rowan's lap without warning. "Please don't go fight the bad guy. Stay with us." Rowan rested a big hand on Jonah's back. "I'm not leaving you, but we can't hide forever." Jonah blinked up at him. "Because he's mean? Because he's dangerous." Maren reached out, touching Jonah's shoulder. "Rowan is trying to keep us safe. That's all." Jonah nodded slowly, leaning into Rowan's chest. And Rowan, for a moment, let his guard down enough to hold the boy gently. When Jonah finally drifted into a light sleep, Rowan carried him to the old cot in the corner, laying him down carefully. Maren watched him tuck the blanket around Jonah's small body. She felt something shift inside her, quiet, deep, undeniable. When Rowan stepped back to the fire, she joined him. "You're good with him," she whispered. "He's a good kid. And you're good too. Better than people say." Rowan's jaw twitched. "People say a lot of things." "I know, but I'm starting to understand which parts are true." His eyes met hers, slow, steady, dark as the forest at midnight. Before either of them could speak, a distant crack echoed outside, a twig snapping. Rowan stiffened instantly. Maren froze. "Was that—" "Yes," Rowan whispered. "Someone's out there." He grabbed his rifle and moved silently toward the window, peering through a slit in the wooden frame. The early dawn light barely touched the clearing, but Rowan's eyes searched every shadow. Another sound. Footsteps. Slow. Purposeful. Maren's pulse thudded in her ears. She crouched near Jonah, shielding him. Rowan raised his voice just slightly, calm but commanding. "Stay back. Don't make a sound." The footsteps grew closer. Then a silhouette appeared near the tree line. Tall, broad-shouldered, carrying something in his hand. Rowan's grip tightened on the rifle. Maren couldn't breathe. Closer. Closer. Then the figure stepped into the clearing, and Rowan exhaled, lowering the rifle just enough. "It's Nate," he murmured. Maren blinked. "Who's Nate?" "My brother." Nate moved toward the cabin, face drawn with worry, boots crunching over frost. He knocked once. Firmly, Rowan opened the door just a crack. Nate's voice came low and urgent. "Rowan, Crowther's gathering more men. He's planning something big." Rowan stiffened. "How many?" "Too many, and he's heading this way." Maren felt the world tilt beneath her. Jonah stirred in his sleep. Rowan's eyes sharpened with a fierce, terrible calm. "Then it's time," he said quietly. "Time for what?" Maren whispered. Rowan turned to her, voice steady, final. "To stop running." Silence filled the cabin after Rowan spoke. An uneasy silence that felt thicker than the cold morning air. Maren stood frozen near the fireplace, Jonah still asleep under the threadbare blanket, unaware of how quickly the world around him was shifting. Nate stepped inside, shutting the door quietly behind him. Snow dusted his shoulders and the brim of his hat, but it was the look in his eyes that chilled Maren more than the winter wind could. Urgency. Fear. And something Rowan rarely allowed himself to feel. Doubt. "Tell me everything," Rowan said, voice low but steady. Nate nodded, removing his gloves as he stepped closer to the fire. "Crowther's got at least a dozen men now. Maybe more, all armed. Some of them drinking, some mean as dogs. He's paying them to find your tracks. Says if you're hiding with the girl and the kid, he'll drag all three of you back alive." Maren swallowed hard, stomach twisting. Alive. She didn't want to imagine what Crowther had planned, after that Rowan exchanged a dark glance with Nate. "He's getting desperate." "He's getting crazy," Nate corrected. "Says you humiliated him in front of the whole valley. He's not thinking straight." Maren hugged herself, unable to stop the tremor in her hands. What are we going to do? Rowan looked at her, directly, intensely. We make a stand. Nate stiffened. Rowan. Rowan cut him off. Running won't stop him. Hiding won't stop him. If we want peace, real peace, we have to end this here. Maren shook her head, voice cracking. You can't take on 12 men, Rowan. Not alone, he said. Nate sighed heavily. You're pulling me into this, aren't you? You came all the way out here, Rowan said quietly. You already chose a side. Nate muttered something under his breath, then nodded. Damn it. Fine. But we need a plan. Rowan turned to scan the cabin, the walls, the windows, the layout of the clearing outside. His thoughts were already moving, calculating. The cabin's small, he said. Only 2 points of entry. They'll try to flush us out or set the place on fire. Maren's heart jolted. Fire? Rowan crossed to her, placing a reassuring hand on her arm. I won't let them get anywhere near you, or Jonah. But fear still churned inside her. Rowan, you're talking like you won't survive this. His jaw flexed, eyes softening in a way that made her chest ache. I'm talking like someone who's not going to lose you. Nate cleared his throat. We're wasting time. Sunrise is in less than an hour. Rowan nodded, pulling away reluctantly. We need supplies, barricades, and a place to put Maren and Jonah where they'll be safest. Jonah stirred on the cot. Mama, what's happening? Maren rushed to his side. Rowan knelt beside them. We just need to get ready, buddy. Some bad men might come looking for us, but we're going to protect you. Jonah's eyes widened, but he nodded bravely. Because you're strong? Rowan smiled faintly. Because I promised. Nate clapped his gloves together. Let's start with the windows. Rowan and Nate worked quickly, dragging the table, old chairs, and stacks of firewood to reinforce the doors and windows. Maren helped gather anything that might serve as a barrier. Empty crates, the broken chair legs, heavy cooking pots. Every noise outside made her flinch as Rowan hammered a loose board into place. Nate leaned close to him. This isn't just about Crowther, is it? Rowan didn't look up. Don't start. You care about her, Nate said quietly. Rowan paused only for a second before continuing the hammering. She and Jonah deserve better than what Crowther wants for them. That's not what I meant. Rowan kept working, shoulders tense. We're not talking about this now. Nate let it go, for the moment. Once the last window was reinforced, Rowan stepped back to assess their defense. This will slow them down, maybe give us enough time. Enough time for what? Maren asked. Rowan hesitated before answering. To draw them away from you. Maren stood up sharply. Rowan, no. He met her eyes, firm but gentle. They want me more than they want you. If I pull them off the cabin, Nate can get you and Jonah deeper into the woods. That's suicide. It's strategy, Rowan corrected calmly, and it might be our only chance. Jonah wrapped his arms around Maren's waist. Mama, I don't want Rowan to go. Maren stroked his hair, voice trembling. Neither do I. Rowan walked over and crouched beside Jonah. Hey, I'll come back, I promise. Maren's throat tightened. She didn't want to hear promises, not with Crowther's men closing in. Nate stepped forward. Rowan, look, I know you want to protect them, but you're not going on a one-man rescue mission. Rowan raised a brow. You gonna tie me to a chair? Don't tempt me. Rowan almost smiled. Almost. Then he moved to the small trunk in the corner and pulled out a metal lockbox. He flicked it open and revealed a revolver, dark steel worn from use. Maren's breath caught. She had seen that gun once before. On the day Rowan stopped Crowther from grabbing her outside the store. The day everything changed. Rowan checked the chamber methodically. "This is our last resort." Nate shook his head. "You said you'd never use that thing again." "I said I'd never use it unless I had to." Rowan snapped the cylinder shut. "Today, I have to." Maren felt a tremor move through her. "Rowan, I don't want Jonah to see violence." "He won't," Rowan said gently. "You'll be gone with Nate before anything happens." She grabbed his arm. "And if something happens to you?" He looked down at her hand, then back into her eyes. Slowly, deeply, with the weight of everything he felt, but never said, "Then at least I'll know you're safe." Her breath hitched, and she shook her head fiercely. "No, I'm done letting men decide my fate. I'm not being protected from the world while the people I care about walk into danger." Rowan's expression shifted, conflict twisting behind his eyes. "Maren, I'm staying, whether you like it or not." Nate raised his brows. "She's got your stubbornness." Rowan exhaled in frustration, rubbing his forehead. "This isn't a debate." "It is now," Maren insisted. "I won't let you stand alone." Rowan stared at her, long, hard, torn between instinct and something deeper. Finally, he spoke, voice barely above a whisper. "Then we do this together. But you listen to every word I say." Maren nodded. "Always." Nate sighed. "Guess I'm the one taking Jonah to safety then." Jonah clutched Maren's sleeve. "I don't want to leave." Rowan knelt and held Jonah's shoulders gently. "Jonah, listen. You're the bravest kid I know. But right now, the best way you can help us is by staying quiet and letting Nate keep you safe." Jonah looked between them, fighting tears. Will you come back?" Rowan placed a hand over Jonah's small one. "I will fight like hell to." The room went silent again, heavy with what lay ahead. Finally, Nate spoke. "We should move. Crowther's men could be here any minute." Rowan nodded once. "Positions." He moved toward the door, revolver at his side, breath controlled and deadly calm. Maren stood behind him, gripping a heavy iron skillet, her pulse racing but her resolve firm. Nate picked up Jonah and headed toward the back exit that led deeper into the trees. Then, a distant shout echoed through the forest, followed by another. Maren's heart dropped. They were here. Rowan's jaw tightened as he slid into place beside the window. "This is it." Snow fell silently outside, the pale morning light painting the clearing in muted white as dark figures began to emerge from the tree-lined Crowther's men. All of them. Maren gripped the skillet with trembling hands. Rowan steadied his breathing. Jonah buried his face in Nate's coat as Nate slipped out the back. And just before the first shot cracked through the still air, Rowan whispered, "Stay behind me." The first gunshot cracked through the clearing like a bolt of lightning tearing open the sky. Maren flinched instinctively, pressing her back against the wall beside Rowan. Snow fluttered from the cabin roof as echoes rolled through the forest. Rowan stayed calm, too calm. His breathing was steady, his posture firm, his eyes sharp as blades as he scanned the tree line through the narrow gap in the boarded window. "They're spreading out," he murmured. "They'll try to circle us." Maren tried to control her trembling hands wrapped around the iron skillet. She wasn't helpless, but this was more danger than she had ever faced. Rowan sensed the fear radiating from her and shifted slightly to block her from the window's line of sight. "They won't get close," he said. "Not while I'm standing." Outside, dark figures moved between the trees, Crowther's hired men. Some shouted to one another, rising adrenaline twisting their voices. Rowan glanced at the back door. Nate should be halfway to the ridge by now. And Jonah, she whispered. He's with your boy. He'll protect him with his life. Maren inhaled shakily. She trusted Nate, but Jonah was her world. Every second she didn't see him felt like she was missing a heartbeat. A second shot split the air. This one striking the wood near the window, splinters burst inward. Maren gasped. Rowan yanked her back, shielding her with his body. Stay low, he warned. Rowan lifted his revolver and fired one clean shot through the gap. A grunt echoed from the woods. One down, Rowan whispered. But they were far from finished. Snow crunched. 3, maybe 4 men rushing the clearing. Rowan dropped to a crouch, eyes narrowing. They're coming from the left. Maren clutched the skillet hard enough to hurt. What do we do? We hold. Suddenly a heavy thud slammed against the front door, then another. The hinges groaned under the assault. They're trying to break in, Maren whispered. Rowan shot 2 bullets into the doorframe. Precise, controlled a yell answered from the other side, but Rowan's revolver clicked empty. He froze. Damn! How many bullets do you have left? She asked. That was the last of them. Maren felt the blood drain from her face. Rowan. He tossed the revolver aside, grabbed a thick piece of firewood, and steadied his stance. Weapons are weapons, Maren. Anything can keep us alive. The door shuddered again. Then a voice roared from outside. Rowan Wilkes, you can't hide in there forever. Crowther. His voice was unmistakable, cold, venomous, dripping with the promise of violence. Maren's stomach churned. The man who had haunted her steps, ignored her refusals, and claimed the right to own her like property. Rowan's jaw clenched so hard she thought it might crack. She's mine, Wilkes. Hand her over and I'll make your death quick. Maren felt her breath choke in her throat. Rage flickered in Rowan's eyes. He doesn't get to say your name, he muttered, low, dangerous. The door suddenly burst inward, splitting off its hinges and crashing to the floor. 3 men stormed inside with guns raised and clubs swinging. Rowan didn't think. He moved. He slammed the first man across the temple with the firewood. The man dropped like a stone. Maren swung the skillet at the second, striking his wrist and knocking his gun loose. Rowan grabbed the weapon mid-air and hit the man in the jaw with it. The third lunged for Maren. Rowan roared, a sound she had never heard from him before, and tackled the man to the ground, pinning him under his knee and delivering a brutal blow that knocked him unconscious. Before Rowan could catch his breath, gunfire erupted again outside. Maren seized the fallen man's pistol, hands trembling but determined. Rowan looked at her in shock. You don't have to. Yes, I do. His eyes softened with pride he didn't have time to voice. More shadows moved across the clearing. Rowan pulled Maren behind the table they had used as a barricade. Stay low. Shoot only if they break through. But what about you? He didn't answer. He grabbed the pistol from the second man, checked the chamber, and slipped toward the broken doorway. Rowan, she whispered. He glanced back just once. I have to end this before they get to Nate. Her breath caught. Be careful. His gaze held hers for a heartbeat that felt like a promise. Then he disappeared into the blinding white outside. The clearing erupted into chaos. Rowan slid behind a tree stump, firing a warning shot. The mercenaries ducked, shouting curses. One man rushed him from the left. Rowan dodged, struck him with the gun's handle, and dropped him, but for every man he downed, 2 more moved closer. Crowther's voice thundered through the forest. Kill the boy's protector first! The girl is mine! Maren heard it from the cabin and felt something inside her snap. Tears burned her eyes, not from fear, but fury. Rowan fought with everything he had, but he was outnumbered. A blow landed across his back. He stumbled. Another man swung at him. Rowan blocked it, but pain flashed across his face. And then, Crowther stepped out from behind a pine tree, rifle raised. Maren's breath caught. Rowan didn't see him. Crowther aimed directly at Rowan's chest. "Rowan!" she screamed from the cabin. He turned toward her voice, a shot echoed. Time seemed to freeze. Rowan staggered backward, clutching his side. His knees buckled. The snow around him darkened. "No!" Maren shrieked. Crowther laughed, a horrible, triumphant sound. "Should have stayed out of my way, Wilkes." Maren's ears rang. The world blurred. She moved without thinking, sprinting out of the cabin and into the clearing. "Maren, stop!" Nate's voice echoed from somewhere behind her. He and Jonah must have returned after hearing the gunfire, but she didn't stop. She ran straight toward Rowan. Crowther raised his rifle again, aiming at her now. "Fine. I'll take you both." Maren lifted the pistol with shaking hands. Crowther smirked. "You won't shoot me. You never had that kind of fire in you." Maren's voice cracked but carried. "You never knew anything about me." And she fired. Crowther jerked, shock flashing across his face as he stumbled backward into the snow. Maren dropped the gun and fell to her knees beside Rowan, blood soaked through his shirt, warm and terrifying. "Rowan, please stay with me," she begged, voice breaking. Rowan breathed hard, eyes dimming but still locked on hers. You did it, Maren. "You saved me," she said, tears spilling. "Now let me save you." Nate rushed forward, Jonah behind him. "We need to get him inside now." Maren nodded fiercely. "He's going to live. He has to." Rowan faintly smiled, a weak, pained smile. "For you," he whispered. "I'll try." Together they lifted him. The cabin stood waiting, broken, cold, but still standing, just like Rowan, just like the fight inside Maren that had finally awakened. They carried him inside, and the door slammed shut behind them. While the forest fell silent, snow fell gently over the clearing as Nate and Maren carried Rowan back into the cabin. The air was thick with fear, thick with hope, thick with everything that had been fought for. They lowered him onto the cot Jonah had used earlier. Rowan winced as Nate pressed a hand to the wound. "It missed the lung," Nate murmured, examining the entry point. "Bullet went clean through the side. He's lucky." Maren brushed the hair from Rowan's forehead. "He's alive. That's enough." Rowan tried to smile, but pain tightened his features. "Still, hurts like hell." "That means you're still here," Maren whispered, voice trembling with relief. Nate dug into his pack for cloth, water, and the small tin of salve he'd carried since they were boys. He began cleaning the wound, while Rowan gritted his teeth and gripped Maren's hand. Jonah stood beside Maren, tears streaking his face. "Rowan, please don't die." Rowan opened one eye and gave Jonah a tired half-smile. "I survived worse than this. I'm not going anywhere, kid." Jonah threw his arms around Rowan's shoulders, carefully, trying not to hurt him, before Nate gently pulled him back. "Let me finish patching him up, Jonah." While Nate worked, Maren leaned close, her voice soft. "You saved us, even after everything, even after I told you not to take risks." He shifted slightly, grimacing. "You think I could watch you walk into danger? You think I could let Crowther near Jonah? Near you?" His fingers tightened around hers. "I'd do it again." Her eyes softened. "I know." Nate finished wrapping the bandage tightly and stepped back. "He needs rest. No fighting, No moving too fast, and definitely no standing up to play hero again today. Rowan huffed a weak laugh. No promises. Maren leaned over him and kissed his forehead. Rowan's eyes fluttered shut, not from pain, but from the warmth of her touch. Rest, she whispered. He did. Night deepened, settling over the valley like a blanket. The fire cast a warm glow across the cabin, illuminating the carved wooden beams, and the worn quilts Nate had spread over Rowan. Jonah slept beside the hearth, wrapped in Rowan's coat for comfort. Maren sat silently beside Rowan's cot, keeping watch. Every rise and fall of his chest felt like a miracle. She brushed his fingers lightly. I thought I lost you. Rowan stirred, his voice rough and soft. You can't lose something that didn't want to leave. Maren blinked back tears, happy ones this time. You scared me. Rowan cracked a faint smile. I scare a lot of people, but not me, she whispered. His eyes opened fully, steady and clear. That's because you see me different. You see the parts I don't show. She took a slow, shaky breath. And I want to keep seeing them. He watched her carefully, heart pounding beneath the bandages. Maren, what happens now? After all this? She thought for a moment. We heal, all of us. And then we build something new. Together. Together, he repeated, tasting the word like it was something holy. A quiet knock interrupted them. Nate pushed the door open slightly. You two doing all right? Maren nodded. He's awake. Nate stepped inside. Good. Sheriff and Doc Harding found the bodies. They're clearing the woods now, making sure no one else is lurking. His tone shifted. Crowther's dead. They confirmed it. Rowan exhaled slowly, tension draining from his shoulders. It's over. Nate nodded. It is. And the sheriff said Maren's free. No more debts. No more pressure from Crowther or his men. Maren felt tears gather again. Relief, gratitude, and something new blooming inside her. I can breathe again, she said. And you'll keep breathing, Nate assured. All of you. He stepped back outside, closing the door to give them privacy. Rowan squeezed her hand. Maren, I know you're free now. Free to choose where to go, who to be with. Free to start over. She leaned forward, her voice steady. I already made my choice. He blinked. You did? She nodded. The moment you carried Jonah to safety. The moment you faced down a dozen men to protect us. The moment you told me I deserved better. I knew. She placed her hand on his cheek. I choose this. I choose you. Rowan swallowed hard, emotion thickening his voice. You don't feel obligated? You're not staying because I got shot? She smiled softly. If anything, getting shot proves you're bad at staying out of trouble, and it proves I'm exactly where I should be. Making sure you don't do something stupid without me again. He laughed. A quiet, pained, beautiful sound. Maren leaned in and kissed him gently. A kiss filled with gratitude and love and everything still waiting ahead. Rowan kissed her back, slow and steady. When they pulled apart, Jonah was standing next to them, rubbing his sleepy eyes. Are we a family now? He asked in a tiny voice. Maren turned toward Rowan, letting him answer. Rowan's eyes warmed. He reached out and pulled Jonah carefully onto the cot between them. If you want to be, Rowan said softly. Then yes, we are. Jonah grinned, snuggling between them. I want that. A lot. Maren rested her head against Rowan's shoulder. Jonah curled against her side. For the first time in years, she felt safe. Truly safe. Rowan whispered, We'll find a place. A real home. Maybe near the foothills or the river, somewhere Jonah can run around. Somewhere you can be happy, Maren added. Rowan looked at her like she had given him something priceless. I've never been closer to happy than I am right now. She took his hand. Then let's build from here. No more running, no more hiding. No more fear, Rowan agreed. The fire crackled warmly beside them. Snow continued to fall gently outside, softening the world, making it new. The cabin, once a place of temporary refuge, had become something else. A beginning. By dawn, the storm eased. Nate returned to check on them one last time before riding back to town. You know, he told Rowan, I think you're finally where you were meant to be. Rowan squeezed his brother's arm for the first time. I think you're right. Nate smiled and rode off, disappearing down the snowy trail. Maren watched him go, then turned back inside to Rowan and Jonah waiting in the doorway. Jonah held both their hands. Can we go home now? Jonah asked. Rowan met Maren's eyes. Yes, she said. Let's go home. Rowan stepped onto the porch, his arm around Maren, Jonah between them. 3 silhouettes against the morning light. The forest was quiet, peaceful, alive. And as they walked away from the cabin toward a future shaped by their own hands, Maren knew one truth with absolute certainty. Love wasn't what saved them. Love was what they chose, again and again, until they built a life worth fighting for. I hope you enjoyed this story. Subscribe to my channel so you don't miss touching stories, leave a like, and then comment below what you thought of the emotional stories. See you in the next video.